Son of God and King of Israel are magnificent titles of the Messiah, filled to overflowing by Jesus to the point where they got him killed. Son of Man did not get him killed, but he took the name Son of Man and made it the designation of the picture of himself killed for us.
When it comes to our salvation, what is the significance of the titles Son of God and Son of Man? That's the question John Piper explores in John 1:43-51 in this episode of Light and Truth. This sermon was originally preached at Bethlehem Baptist Church on December 7th, 2008.
So Jesus tells Nathanael that before he was even there, he saw him under a fig tree, and he told him what was in his heart. And Nathanael is so blown away by Jesus' knowledge of what is not in his presence that he bursts out in verse 49, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." Now, Nathanael obviously meant something very great by that, but probably not as great as they would come to mean in Jesus' thinking and in this gospel and in Jesus' mouth. So we want to see both. We want to see what Nathanael meant as a Jew who would rise to that level of insight and what this gospel makes of these names. Nathanael was an Israelite in whom there was no guile. He said it like he saw it and probably knew his Old Testament because there were prominent verses in the Old Testament about the coming one, the Messiah, and the one that puts together King and Son, and there are many. 3 that I can think of right off the bat. Probably the most prominent one was 2 Samuel chapter 7. I'm going to look at Old Testament texts that you may not have time to look up, so jot them down and check it out later. 2 Samuel 7, 12-14 go like this. This is God speaking to David. "I will raise up from your offspring after you, who will come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be to me a son." Now, at the first level, the meaning is Solomon. We know that because the next phrase says, "And when he sins," you say, "Oh, okay, that's not Jesus." But Solomon's kingdom didn't last forever. You got layers here. Yes, there will be Solomon, and yes, he will build an earthly house. But his kingdom won't be forever. And all Israel knew this promise meant more. It became a rock-solid basis for the hope. There's another king coming. He would be the son of David. He would be the king of Israel. Nathanael, no doubt, had in mind, that's who's here. And then you see that phrase at the end of verse 14, "And I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me." And you can see why Nathanael might have put together, "You are the Son of God, and you are the King of Israel," because in the foundational promise, he was king, and his kingdom would last forever, and he was son. And so Nathanael is giving expression to both of these. When Jesus was predicted to Mary by the angel said in Luke 1:32, the Lord God will give to him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. These are the very words of 2 Samuel. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom, there will be no end. In other words, Jesus fulfills 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. He is a king. His kingdom will have no end. And he is a son of God. I will be a father to him, and he shall be to me a son. This child to be born, the angel said to Mary, will be holy, the Son of God. So the angel puts together all the pieces of 2 Samuel. He will be the Son of David. His kingdom will have no end. He will be holy, the Son of God. King of Israel, Son of God, in the words to Mary in Nathanael's mouth and in 2 Samuel chapter 7. Let me give you another place in the Old Testament where Nathanael probably had been schooled and where the ideas that formed the expectation of the Messiah in those days would have been formed. This is Psalm chapter 2. Both Messiahship, anointing, kingship, and sonship are all right here. So I'll read it to you. This is Psalm 2, verses 2 through 7. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed. Now that's the word for Messiah, Mashiach, anointed one. Verse 5. Then He will speak to them in His wrath and terrify them in His fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king. This is God speaking of His king. My king on Zion, my holy hill. So now the anointed one is king. Verse 7. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. So there you have all three clustered together. Anointed, that is Messiah. King, son. Nathanael knew this. There would come one. Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. That is, the time of fulfillment is here. There was a frenzy ready to happen in Israel when just the right person would come along, and there had been pretenders along the way, and expectations ran very high, and the Roman overlords were so oppressing, and they knew this could not last, and God meant to break the bonds of those who oppressed His people if just the right person would come. And so He knew, you're the one, the kingdom is here, Messiah has come. He will rule the nations with a rod of iron, just says, like it says in Psalm 2, verses 8 and 9. And He was so right and so wrong. He believed too much and he believed too little about Jesus. Too much and too little. Too much because this son and this king would be executed as a criminal. Unfathomable, probably to Nathanael. Too little because these terms, son and king, were to mean probably more than Nathanael dreamed. What did they mean for Jesus? What did they mean for John? Let me take you on a little pilgrimage in the gospel to make it crystal clear what they meant for Jesus and John writing about Him. We'll start, and you might want to look at these. These are absolutely crucial texts in the Gospel of John. John 5:18. says, this was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Now, where did they get that idea? Because I doubt that Nathanael thought that. There were enough clues in the Old Testament to get that. I will try to show you in a minute. But most of the Jews wouldn't have gone there. How did they get there? Jesus took them there. Chapter 8, verse 57. Derisively, they scoff and ask him, have you seen Abraham? 8:57. Have you seen Abraham? The one who lived 2,000 years ago? Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. Now that's more than you may think it is. Not only did it claim, yeah, I saw him, and I was before him, but to use the word I am is absolute blasphemy, unless it's true. Because God had identified himself in Exodus 3:14. I am who I am. Tell them I am sent you. This is God. This is as radical as you can possibly get if you want to get crucified. That's how they got there. That's how sonship language began to fill up with its Old Testament fullness, not its reinterpreted fullness. Chapter 10, verse 33. I'm telling you, these are absolutely crucial texts in the Gospel of John. Put a star by them in the margin. Chapter 10, verse 33. They had, by the way, picked up stones to stone him back in chapter 8 when he said that. Now they say, it's not for a good work that we are about to stone you, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself God. So, when the accusers take him before Pilate in chapter 19, verse 7, they made the connections clear. Sonship and blasphemous claims to deity. John 19:7. We have a law, and according to that law, he ought to die because he has made himself the Son of God. That's not a capital crime if it just means prophet. But if it means what they came to see that he meant by it, it is. So Son of God had come to mean much more than merely a human Messiah. You make yourself God. That was the meaning in the mouth of Jesus and in the Gospel of John. The greater the title became, the more fullness it became, the more deadly it became. And that's the way Jesus meant it to be. This is not reinterpretation. This is application. Jesus came as the Jewish Messiah, and then he just filled up for their full understanding what was really there. Mighty God. The term King of Israel, and not just the term Son of God, was turned against him. As you know. The more it got big, the more it got treasonous. And in the end, It is his kingship that would be his death sentence. Sometimes I look for places in the Bible that exalt Jesus and show love to me. Because it's one of my favorite things to say, that the way he loves me is by exalting himself. Well, there it is. You want to get yourself killed for me? Make this much of yourself. If you don't want to die for me, don't let much be made of you. But if you mean to die for me, go ahead and make much of yourself like you do with Son of God and King of Israel, so that you will be surely slaughtered on the cross, unmistakably executed for me. I am thankful that you made much of yourself in this way. For me. Let's turn to Son of Man. We're at verse 50 in chapter 1 of John. Jesus answered Nathanael, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these. Verse 51. And he said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and angels, the angels of God, ascending and descending on the Son of Man. That's a strange verse. Right? Like he's a ladder. Yes. Yes. Now, some of you know where this is coming from, right? You have a picture. You're like the Israelite in whom there's no guile. You know your Old Testament. You know Genesis 28. You remember that story. You know where Bethel, that name, comes from. Not many of you are nodding your head, so I'm not assuming you do know. Jacob lays down, puts a rock under his head. No wonder you have dreams. Got a rock under your head. And he has a dream. What a dream. Let me read it to you. This is the picture of where Jesus, in verse 51, is getting this image. And we can try to figure out, what are you doing here? So let me read it to you. This is Genesis 28, verses 12 to 16. Jacob dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. Behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. On it. There's the language of verse 51. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, for I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. In other words, this is a big, strong reaffirmation of the covenant made with Abraham, now made with Jacob. Verse 16, then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And then he named the place Bethel, house of God. Now, what are we to make of Jesus' statement? I think, and you step back and open your lens, what Jesus is doing here is saying two things, or John, in capturing this, is saying two things. One is that Jesus is the final decisive connection between heaven and earth. Okay? It's the final decisive connection on the Son of Man. You want to go up? Go on Jesus. You want to come down? Go on Jesus. No up without Jesus, no down without Jesus. Son of Man is there. He's the He's the link. The decisive, final link. Second, I think it's the place where decisively now we meet God. Jesus is where we meet God. This is the house of God. Some commentators say Jesus is the new Bethel. I think that's probably right. New Bethel. Now, if you want to say, where on the planet today is a holy place that I can do a pilgrimage and be in the house of God? Answer, Jesus. You want to go to a holy place on the planet? Stand still and come to Jesus. That's the way things changed in the New Testament. There aren't any holy sites in the Christian religion. Zero. I've never gone to Israel mainly for that reason. Please, when I'm here 30 years, don't give me a free trip to Israel. Fix my car. He's got no problem with you going to Israel. I don't want any emails. There's just no more Jesus in Israel than there is in your pew right now. And now here's the last question. Why did he use the term Son of Man? Son of Man is Jesus' favorite self-designation. 80 times in the Gospels, and nobody uses it but Jesus. Did you know that? He's never called the Son of Man by anybody but himself. With one exception outside the Gospel. Stephen, chapter 7, the book of Acts, saw the Son of Man. Now that's amazing. That's amazing. That calls for some reflection. Why did you choose this name for your favorite? I think the common conception of Son of God signifies divine and Son of Man signifies human is not entirely wrong. But it is overly simplified. And the reason we know that it's oversimplified is because in all likelihood, Jesus took the term Son of Man from Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, this is a heavenly scene. He's seeing something going on in heaven. With the clouds of heaven, there came one like a Son of Man. That's the phrase. And he came to the Ancient of Days. That's God the Father. And was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and glory and kingdom, that all the peoples and nations and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away. This is all the language of Messiah and all the language of 2 Samuel and all the language of Isaiah 9:6. And his kingdom is one that will not be destroyed. So, this picture of one like a Son of Man coming to the presence of God, receiving a kingdom, that kingdom will never end. His dominion will never cease. Kingship, glory, sovereignty. So, when Jesus uses the term Son of Man, two things are going on, not just one thing. It has a lowly ring. It does. Son of Man, the prophets used it for themselves. It can mean just human. That's what it means. Son of Man, in its most ordinary sense, it has a lowly ring to it. Let me close like this. Son of God and King of Israel are magnificent titles of the Messiah, filled to overflowing by Jesus to the point where they got him killed. Son of Man did not get him killed, but he took the name Son of Man and made it the designation of the picture of himself killed for us. Nobody did this. He did this. And I'll read you the key verse and we will be done. John chapter 3. This is just before your great favorite verse, John 3:16. John chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him may have eternal life.
This is Light and Truth, God-centered preaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Kruger. Thank you for listening. On our next episode, John Piper begins a 4-part series titled Augustine and Sovereign Joy. I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.